Fresh Blood, Chapter 4. The First Two Girls. The first murder had been in January. Rosa Gibson was found in a pallet yard only a block from Nathan's apartment building by the night watchman. He'd gotten there in minutes, but Rosa had been long dead, white snow settling on her rich dark skin and clouding the dried blood around the hole in her chest. She was in a part of the yard where the watchman didn't trouble to walk too often. He was getting on in years, and Nathan didn't know why anyone would think he'd be capable of watching anything, but find he did, and at least he called the police rather than the business owners. Speaking to them later, Nathan wasn't at all convinced that they wouldn't have just hidden the body away somewhere and told no one. He didn't think they had anything to do with her death, just that they didn't care enough about her life to become embroiled in it. Rosa had been born in the Caribbean 29 years earlier. Came to New York through a marriage that broke down and left her with a husband who wouldn't pay his share for the child that came of their marriage, and a waitress job that barely paid the bills. Still, she'd been sticking at it while studying at community college on the side for an accountancy qualification that would make life easier for her and baby Jojo. She was trying her best with a bad hand of cards. Instead, she wound up dead in the snow, and Jojo would have to go back to the dad who'd done so little for her. Doc French had buzzed around the scene and tutted and clicked in that curious way of his, and when he got Rosa back to the mortuary, he confirmed that the heart had been removed, though he could not tell how it had been done. His best guess was surgical tools. Joe had hoped the husband would turn out to be the guilty party, but he was in a bar with a dozen other people at the time, all confirmed by the bar's CCTV, and he barely had enough money to cover his tab, let alone pay for someone else to do the killing, so that was a dead end. Strand by strand, the investigation petered out, to the point where it became clear Rosa had been killed by a stranger, or at least someone who was such a hidden part of her life that it was far from evident. No one who showed up in the investigation had the skills to surgically remove a heart, and no one showed up who had an obvious motivation to kill someone spoken about softly and warmly by her friends. She was last seen dashing out from the restaurant to catch her bus home. She never made it to the bus and died just over a block away from where she worked. The trail went cold, and New York is a city with too high a murder rate for resources to be devoted to a cold case for too long, so the case file stayed on Nathan's desk, but under other, faster-to-solve cases. It was the second murder that brought Rosa's case file back up to the top of the pile. 8 weeks ago, a full 6 months on from Rosa's death, Pastor Elaine Josephs arrived at the Columbaville Episcopal Church to start her preparations for the morning service to find a second victim. Anna Hartman's 40th birthday had been just 2 weeks before her body was found in the church grounds, half hidden under a bush. Again it had been a call to Nathan's house, waking Annie, who clumsily, sleepily handed over the phone. When Nathan and Joe arrived, Pastor Josephs was still standing there, despite the cool morning air. Nathan knew Elaine a little. He'd first met the pastor when she was doing outreach work to the homeless in Columbaville. He'd never seen her so pale. Anna was a New Yorker, born and bred, of German heritage back in her family tree. She'd fought back against her killer, it seemed, Doc French finding threads under her fingernails that seemed to come from the killer's jacket. It hadn't helped. Again the heart had been removed. Again Doc French could find no sign of how it had been removed. Anna had been a graphic designer at a studio in Manhattan. She was well thought of, by all accounts good at her job, but had never settled down with anyone, never had children. She lived in a pleasant apartment in one of the nicer parts of Columbaville, along with a cat and occasional visits from a lover who was genuinely devastated by the news of her death. He didn't have an alibi for the night she died, and Nathan and Joe spent a lengthy amount of time investigating him, but he never seemed a likely suspect. He could be ruled out too for Rosa's death, as he was out of the country at the time of her death on business. 2 would resolutely not find another 2 to add up to 4. Anna's only family was an elderly father in a retirement home. There was no path to investigate there. They peered into every corner of Anna's life, but nothing came of it. And there was nothing to link her or Rosa, except for the stray possibility that Anna had dined at the warm and toasty restaurant where Rosa worked. Nathan and Joe had spent days going back over everyone at the restaurant at the time that Rosa had worked there. Nathan knew more than a few of the customers by name. It wasn't too far from where he lived, and he'd stop there for a coffee from time to time when Joe wasn't hankering after their usual stopover in the centre of Columbaville, where old Maisie Jackson served up slices of cherry pie that bulked out Joe's waistline more than he should allow. But no one at Warm and Toasty remembered Anna as they passed around her photograph. And the regular customers nodded in agreement when Alice Peabody behind the counter said that was a girl so good-looking they'd have been sure to remember. Anna wasn't on foot when she was last seen. Her car was found only 200 yards or so from where her body was found, engine off, keys still in the ignition. There was no indication of why she had stopped there. Her mobile phone was still in the car. Its directory listed no numbers of anyone in the area. The church was between where she had been last seen, pulling away from visiting friends and waving goodbye, and her home, but there was no indication of why she would pull over while driving at night through the area. Anna's file sat beside Rosa's file on Nathan's desk. No other files were placed on top of them, but that didn't stop the trail becoming just as cold as the winter snow that it all started off in.